And, when I went and told the team, I want to do a TV show that makes fun of TV shows. And
Great
they were
idea.
like,
You created Talk Soup? Was that your
yeah,
idea?
yeah.
Wow,
Amazing.
that is awesome.
Yeah, and people are going, you're out of your mind. You can't do a TV show that makes fun of TV shows. And I'm like, why not? We got Greg. Greg Kinnear was the first host of it. And, say, Greg, we want to show you clips, just make fun of it. We didn't have writers. We couldn't afford writers.
Welcome to the Hollywood Raw YouTube page, guys. We're happy to have you here. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave us comments, do all the stuff.
What are you waiting for? Let's go. I got a drug addiction to feed.
Welcome to the Hollywood Raw podcast. My name is Adam Glenn. Not here today. He is absent, is Dax Holt. He's on another summer vacation because you cannot take enough summer vacations if you're Dax Holt. But it's Mr. Me, Mr. 365. There's Mr. 305, which is Pitbull. I'm 365. I keep working. I'm Adam Glenn, joined by my friend, my pal. I'm so excited to have on today's episode and guest co-host with me. He's a writer he's worked with TMZ, The Wrap, and now he's with People Magazine. Lawrence Yee, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Adam. Thank you for having me on. I love to talk all things entertainment, so this is the perfect podcast for that.
Dude, you've had such an awesome career, and because you've basically worked with some of the biggest outlets out there, outlets that people read on. Let me ask you this personally. How did you get your start in the entertainment news world? Did you fall in it like me, or was this something you were trying to find a job for? How'd you land your first job?
I grew up watching Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood. I knew that I wanted to cover the entertainment industry. I never had any desire to be an actor or a creative, but I loved the industry. So I have a very circuitous way into Hollywood, which is where I am now. I'll keep it very short, but essentially I was covering traditional news, which is kind of the same techniques that you would use covering entertainment news, interviewing, research, covering events. But I was doing kind of more traditional news like local news, fires, business news. And eventually I moved into sports production. And long story short, I was hired by Yahoo, which was a big kind of portal. This is kind of mid-aughts. And they had decided to move their Silicon Valley operation down to Hollywood. And with that, they brought me along to cover the Olympics of all things. And
Wow.
After the Olympics, which is, of course, just a 2-week thing, they were like, hey, we'd love for you to stay on. Would you like to be a sports producer for our new homepage? And I was like, I love sports, but what I love even more is entertainment. Can I be an entertainment producer for the Yahoo homepage? So I got hired to program stories, entertainment stories on the Yahoo homepage. And a lot of those partners were Us Weekly, Access Hollywood. So I really was digital first, which is now obviously kind of the standard and the norm. Everything is digital. But back in that day, it was still kind of a lot of print magazines, Variety, People, those type of publications. And I eventually just parlayed that into a career at TMZ, which is where we met. And since then, I've worked at many different outlets, Variety, The Wrap, and now, of course, I'm at the crown jewel, which is people.com.
That is incredible. So, Lawrence, the difference between me and you is I get to interview these people ambush style. They don't know what's coming. Sometimes they don't want to see me. They answer questions they really don't want to. But with you, and especially with the outlets you've worked at, they're big names. So they're usually set up in advance. Who's the person you got to interview that you were starstruck by? You're like, oh my God, I can't believe it gave you chills. I can't believe I'm about to interview this person, get to talk to them and do a story on them. But then when you talk to them, you just were like, man, this person is also the coolest person ever. Like it just met all your expectations.
Wow, you're really putting me on the spot here because I've done a lot of cool interviews in my life.
I know you're a Housewife fan, so like you get like those kind of characters.
It's funny. I would say Andy Cohen actually came to top of mind, even though I've interviewed Andy now probably a half dozen times and he forgets me every single time, but it's fine. He talks to a lot of people. But this is a man who was an entrepreneur. He was just like us. He was a fan of pop culture. He, watched soap operas. He worked in he worked in news just like us, CBS News, and then he really parlayed that into a niche. He kind of created an industry around that, and now Bravo is this huge beast. He has Watch What Happens Live. He has Radio Andy. He has BravoCon. I just find him fascinating as somebody who I would want to emulate, somebody who loved entertainment, made his career, but ultimately did something with it and became a decision maker and a program maker and a taste maker. And now, of course, we are in Housewives, almost 20 years going on, and he's still kind of continuing to innovate. And I think he really made it now because now he's the subject of controversy. I never want to be that. So, I never want to be that topic of controversy, but I do appreciate that he really kind of leaned into what he was passionate about and created new forms of storytelling. I still do more traditional forms of storytelling, which is print interviews, digital interviews, on-camera interviews. But I will always be a stan of people like Andy, people like our interviewee today, Oprah, storytellers, because they ultimately have to get the chance to talk to everyone, and they have the most interesting stories.
Lauren, you are so right, because me and you think so much alike. People ask me that question, and I always got excited to. Obviously, Oprah is a great person. Gail
Right.
King,
you get them all the time.
Yeah, I get. Yeah. I'm fortunate I get to talk to Oprah a good amount of times. Gail King is someone who I'm always curious about because she's met everyone. Obviously before he got into a little bit of trouble, Matt Lauer I always found fascinating because, again, he's met so many people. He's worked on so many of the biggest stories. So I was always curious about his experience kind of doing those stories. And that kind of leads into our guest today. I'm going to introduce our guest today and talk about our guest today. But before we get to our guest, like I said, Dax is away, but I'm very thrilled. I'm very fortunate to have my friend Lawrence Yee from People to join me today. Lawrence, again, is a veteran writer who's wrote for all the top outlets, and he's a good friend, but he's a pop culture aficionado. So it's cool to be talking to someone who we have the same mindset when it comes to pop culture and the entertainment news world. All right, so now let me get to our guest today. Our guest today is the guy who created a network called E. Have you ever heard of it? Yes, you have. I mean, obviously, E, huge network, has had some of the biggest shows out there, changed the face of Hollywood today. Larry, thank you for coming on the Hollywood Raw podcast with Lawrence and I. To begin with, starting a television network, to me, it doesn't even seem realistic. It doesn't even seem like a possibility. You started E. Was this like the ultimate goal for you? Like, what was your ideal vision in your career path?
Well, I grew up in New York, in Brooklyn and stuff. And, the aspiration for my parents was, that I would get a civil service job and be able to retire at 65. So there was no great aspirations. I wasn't interested necessarily in the media and entertainment business. But, after I graduated college, I couldn't get a job, and I ended up taking something very temporary at this new thing called cable TV, and I got a job in Manhattan at Sterling Manhattan Cable, and I thought it was going to be like a temporary summer job. They paid me $90 a week, and I was an assistant underground splicer. So I'd go under the streets of New York every morning and put the wires together and come up every day at 5 o'clock to go home. And so I kind of progressed in there. I went from being an assistant splicer to a splicer to a construction tech. And then Time Incorporated, which at that point was just merely a publishing company, magazines and books, bought the company. And you had all these, Harvard, Yale, and Stanford guys trying to figure out, what it is those folks do when they go under the streets of New York every day. And somebody in HR said, wait a second, there's a guy with an economics degree there. So I kind of became the translator between those two worlds, the tech world, which, basically, at best, people had high school diplomas. And, so I did that. So I kind of grew up in the cable business, and I eventually, progressed to become the director of operations at Manhattan. So I was running, all the things that
So
I worked at.
how old were you when you became the head guy there? How old were you roughly? Do you
I
remember?
was 20. I was 25.
So that's a young age to be kind of an
Yeah.
exec there at a company like that.
Yeah, I had, as I rose to director of operations, and all the technical departments reported to me. So I didn't have marketing, I didn't have finance, I didn't have programming, but I had 300 people who reported to me, all of which were older. Um, so it created an interesting dynamic there, and so I did that, and then when Time Inc. decided they wanted to really, really expand the cable business, they went into a mergers and acquisition mode, and and they were looking for new ways to use the cable other than just entertainment. And so they made me the director of corporate development, looking for new uses of the cable wire. And I was still under 30 at that point. But then I got recruited to come and build the big cable system in Los Angeles because I knew how to build underground. And at that point, all the big cities wanted cable to go below the streets, not on telephone poles. Well, Manhattan doesn't have any telephone poles, so I knew how to build that. And so at 30, I got recruited to build Valley Cable, which was the first two-way 61 channel interactive cable system built in the US. It was a huge system. And and then I I got finance and programming and marketing, or everything reported to me at that point. But when you're a Brooklyn kid and you're in LA and everybody's going to parties and premieres and stuff like that, I called the studios and said, "Hey, put me on the list. I want to go." And they went, "Nah, you're like the gas company. We don't know what cable is. We're not putting you on the list." And finally, I said, "Hey, the most valuable marketing tool that you have is that 2-minute movie trailer." I said, "But the only time I ever see it is when I'm in the movies." I said, "Wouldn't you want me to see it when I'm at home? So make me want to go to the movies." And they went, "Yeah, but we really can't afford it." And I said, "Tell you what, you put me on the list. I'll take those trailers. I'll put them on TV for nothing for you." Of course, then I had 61 channels. There weren't 61 channels available.
Sure.
And when we did market studies, we said, "What's your favorite channel?" People would say, "Oh, I love CNN, I love ESPN, and I love that trailer channel." And I'm like, "That's kind of interesting. I'm getting the best 2 minutes of a movie." Then movies were $50 million, not what they are today, and I get them for nothing, and people love it. And I kind of filed that in the back of my head. But then the company that I worked for, which was a Canadian company, they had sold out and they were moving back to Toronto, and they said, move to Toronto. And I went, "Wait, I didn't go from New York to LA to go to Toronto." I said, "I'm done with cold." So my friend Alan and I, we just started kicking around ideas, and we came up with this thing, MTV of the movies. Um, we said if they could stand a host in front of a green screen and go, "Hey, Madonna has a new video," we could stand a host in front of a green screen and go, "And Schwarzenegger has a new movie."
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so we thought it was brilliant. We wrote a business plan, and and this again was not my lifelong ambition. This was my attempt to stay in LA and
Sure.
not go back. And we
And
were
Grant, and
pretty
hold on, roughly how? So once this is going on, you come up with this trailer, and I'm always just because I'm looking at my age. How old were you at this time when you were kind of came up with this idea and it was starting to kind of come to reality that you're developing these, giving mainstream kind of value to these movie trailers?
Yeah.
And what year was this roughly, Larry? What year was this roughly?
1984.
40 years ago.
Yep. And so Alan and I wrote a plan, and we thought we were brilliant. And then we showed people. I said, "This is a good idea, but you're not Rupert Murdoch. You're not Time Incorporated. You can't start. People don't start TV networks." And I don't know, we were either stubborn or dumb. We just didn't believe that that was true, and we just kept going. And then, at that point, the start of TV network was somewhere between 60 and $100 million. That's why pretty much it's left, big media companies, the Murdochs of the world, and folks like that. And after 3.5 years, we met someone who said, "Oh, there's this bond house on Wall Street. They just started investment banking, and I know the guy that's now in charge of investment banking. Go see him." And we went there, and we met a guy named Jeffrey Pollack, and we went in his office. He had movie posters on the wall, and we were going like, "This is kind of weird." And he said, "Oh, I really love this. I used to be the entertainment reporter for my college newspaper, and he goes, I really like it, and I want to do it." And I said, "Great. Could you give us more like the 100 million than the 60?" And he goes, "Oh, no, no, no." He goes, "I'm only allowed to sign for 2.5." And we went, "But it costs minimum 60." And he goes, "Well, I'm only allowed to sign." But I went. Al and I just said, "You know what? We'll figure this out. Nobody's given us $60 million back then." So we took the 2.5. We did all that stuff. And I had a friend who was teaching radio, television, film at the University of Texas in Austin. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, Brian, do you have a bunch of kids that need intern jobs?" And he said, "Yeah, we had trouble placing kids this year." And I said, "Great, send me them all. Whoever wants to come here, send me them all." And we rented apartments in Hollywood, and we bought mattresses for them. And he sent 31 kids. And, people don't realize that E started with 11 employees and 31 interns.
Wow.
Wow.
So roughly how much money, again, backtracking just a second, how much money did you raise to start E?
$2.5 million.
Just $2.5 million. And you're still able to kind of make it work with just a $2.5 million budget back then?
That saying that necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
We realized, we said, okay, we don't really have money, and certainly we didn't have enough money to buy real equipment. We went and found some company that was going out of business, and we bought their training video equipment. And we rented a small little space in Hollywood, which used to be a freight railroad station, and we turned it into quote, our studio. And it turned out, very fortuitous in that when we went on the air with it, it didn't look like the rest of television. It looked very pirate. And, we said, we're not going to be making fancy programming and stuff like that. So, by using movie trailers is kind of the same way MTV used music videos. We had a very high quality, low cost source of programming to start. And, something that people like. So we figured out all these ways to, use the same movie trailers and, coming to the theater this week, and then best foreign film, best horror film. So we kind of mixed it up a lot. But the main thing we did, which really propelled us, we said, picking the hosts is going to be really the one thing that we have total control over. And we said, we got to pick hosts that love them or hate them, but feel something for them. And so to get the first 5 hosts, and, people always say to me, they go, "Oh, you're lucky you had those great hosts. You had Greg Kinnear, who went on to win the, Oscar, and Katie Wagner, who went on to do Lifestyles of Rich and Famous, and Julie Moran went on to do Entertainment Tonight." That was not an accident. That was the smartest thing Alan and I did. We put 7,200 people on tape to pick the first 5.
Wow. So who were the first hosts were who? It was
Greg Kinnear.
Greg Kinnear, sure.
Julie Moran,
Mm-hmm.
Katie Wagner, Richard Blade, who went on to do K-Rock and, all that stuff, and Mark DiCarlo, who went on to do Studs.
Yeah. I mean,
And
that was a great list. That's, I mean, I didn't really think about how much that meant. It was picking the host. It wasn't just picking a good looking guy or girl. Was it like a story they'd have to have their own story or their own charisma, each person, or?
Yeah. And it was interesting because initially Greg had a hard time learning how to read teleprompter. And, the production crew, of course, we were on really tight schedules and stuff. We didn't really have money to reshoot stuff. And, sometimes he would stumble on reading teleprompter. And they were like, well, we got to keep reshooting them. I said, don't reshoot them, just keep running tape. And, back then we were, it was tape. And
Yeah.
It was interesting because he would, all of a sudden, when he would see that they continued to record, he would like roll his eyebrows. And I would start getting letters from women all around the country going, oh my God, that Greg Kinnear, he's so cute. When he rolls his eyebrows, he looks so vulnerable. We just love him, And I would get like 20 letters, and then the next week I get 50 letters. And, I just said, oh my God, we don't have enough money to reshoot him, and he's going to become a star. Because we don't have enough money to reshoot his segments, and he did. We still see Greg, and he's obviously gone on to have a major career, and he's the same sweet, wonderful person he was now that he was then. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you had Mark DiCarlo, who Mark people did not like. But you know what? They would tune in every day to hate him, to yell at the screen, "We hate you! Get off the stage," kind of thing. And Katie, we picked. Actually, it was kind of funny because Katie then was, the daughter of Robert Wagner, the actor, and she was a fashionista, and she would end up in once or twice a month in People magazine. For what she was wearing and what designer she was wearing and stuff. And, when it came down to picking, we said, this is great. We'll put Katie on because if nothing else, she'll end up in People magazine. And I'll go, Katie Wagner. Originally, the company was called Movie Time, not E. We switched it after. And she would end up in these things and go, here's Katie Wagner of Movie Time. And people go like, Movie Time, what's that? And it kind of then piqued their interest to go and check out what it was and stuff like that. So, that was kind of the origins of it.
Yeah. What was the elevator pitch of the network? When someone said, hey, you got this new network, what is it? How would you explain to someone what it is?
And MTV of the movies or Entertainment Tonight 24 hours a day. Remember, this was kind of the early days of cable. And, you had news every night at 11 o'clock, and then Turner came up with CNN. So it was news whenever you wanted it, and ESPN was sports whenever you wanted it, and then you had the Weather Channel. So you no longer were, had to watch at 11 o'clock or before you went to bed. We were Entertainment Tonight 24 hours a day. And we just said, there's such a global market for entertainment, news, and gossip, and all the things that surround it. That people who love that stuff really wanted more. And the Entertainment Tonights and Access Hollywoods really only served up these 20-second bits. But we went deeper. So if you loved foreign film, we actually would have a half hour a week of best foreign films. Here's what's new in foreign film. Here's what's new in the horror genre. We did a show on movie music, which really analyzed what the people who were creating the music there. So if you were a consumer of the media and entertainment world, we use the term super served. We really served up all the stuff that you wanted that the guys that were still in the half-hour format couldn't do.
Yeah,
Right.
Lawrence, you were a huge E fan back in the day. What were the shows that you sort of watched? So, for me, because like Larry said, I never really thought of it like that. It was entertainment meets MTV, and it was kind of relatable. It was fun. It was cool. It was effortless. But what were the shows that you watched? Yeah,
I think just the news component, what you were saying. I always loved entertainment news as a kid. I remember watching John Tesh and Mary Hart as a kid on Entertainment Tonight, and that was, the 30 minutes that you would get. I remember exactly. It was 7:30 p.m. This is how much it was part of my life, and I think it was in syndication, and I think what E offered, and obviously I was a child, and my parents restricted the amount of cable and television I could watch. But anytime I could get a little tidbit of news or watch an interview. And you have to understand, back in the day, and I'm certainly old enough to talk about this, you didn't have this massive plethora of channels. You didn't have streaming on demand. You really had to tune in. So you had this kind of what we call appointment viewing. So I knew, like, hey, if I want to watch, as you said, the show on movie music, I knew at X time to tune in there, and it was a really, that was just the programming model that people were using back then. And I think E, or what eventually became E, was that destination for that type of content. But as three individuals who work in entertainment, we know that access is really so important, to kind of push your content to the next level. So I think, Larry, if you could talk about, how you ended up winning over the studios and the networks to get access to talent, to shows, and expand beyond just the analysis and the trailer content, that would be a great thing for us to hear about.
Yeah, we kind of looked at it. Again, we did a few. Looking back, we were actually smarter than we thought we were then. So how do I get the attention of the studios? Of course, they would go, "You're a cable company. You're doing what?" And stuff like that. So I made a deal with. I met the folks that owned the Hollywood Reporter back then. And so we started a TV show called the Hollywood Reporter Executive Report with a reporter named Marty Grove. And because Marty had access from his job as, at the Hollywood Reporter, he was the business editor, he was able to get studio heads to come on and in his show. But then we would just go out and blast those things going, "Hey, Paramount, your boss is going to be on TV tomorrow morning. You better watch." And then all of a sudden they're going, "We got to tune in movie. What the heck is movie time? But yeah, we better watch because we don't want to be the guy that's trying to explain why we didn't watch our boss on TV yesterday." So we did that. And then part of our deal, we had a number of pages that we were able to use. And then everybody read the Hollywood Reporter Variety. Before you went to work, you had to read those things. We're going pre-internet now. And so I came out of the cable world. So I knew how to speak to cable operators. And, a lot of cable operators that kind of work for me in Manhattan are now kind of spread around the country. And, I would go to them with this idea and they go, "Well, why do we want to make people go to the movies? We want them to stay home and watch HBO." And I go, "Look, the decision to HBO was, monthly subscription. You used to get a paper guide every month and you'd look at it and go, 'Oh, I know these movies. It's a good month,' or 'Never heard of these movies. It's a bad month.'" It really didn't have anything to do with how good those movies were. It was whether you knew them or not. If you never heard of them, it could be Academy Award winning movies. You just went, "I never heard of this, bad month." And that's how you decided whether to continue your subscription to HBO and Showtime and those. So we said, one of our things is going to show that the more people know about movies and the inside stories and all that, the more likely they are to think well about those services when they looked at that monthly guide. And so I was able to talk to cable operators, and they go, "You know what? You're right. Yeah, we get it." I said, "Look, 18-year-old kids and their dates are not staying home on Friday night to watch HBO. They're going to the movies so they can make out, and eat popcorn." And, the cable operator said, "Okay." So then what I would do, I would sign a cable company up, and then I would take an ad in the Hollywood Reporter going, "We'd like to thank so-and-so cable for signing up." And then I would rip that out and send it to all the other cable operators going, "Don't be left, the train's leaving the station, don't be left." And so we just kept going back and forth between the studios and the cable operators. But then one of the ones that really kind of put it over the top was everybody started signing on. Universal was the first one that got it. They were totally behind it. They said, "You know what? If you guys are successful, this is a godsend for our marketing people." And they were sending video crews to all their film shoots, and they bring us behind the scenes and all that great content. And again, for free. The only one who really wouldn't support us then was Paramount. And we used to have one show. It was like the this week's top 10. and we'd have one of the hosts being, and the number 10 movie of the week is so and so from Universal, and number 9 is from, number 8 is from Warner. But and again, early E was really my sensibility, which was Hollywood is funny shit. Don't make believe it's rocket science. And when we would get to like, the number 8 or number 7 and go, and number 7 is some movie from, I don't know, starts with a studio with a P. We don't know what it is. Let's go next. And to the point where I think it was Frank Price, who was the chairman of Paramount then, literally saw it, and it annoyed the heck out of him because we just kept going, it starts with a P, forget that movie. He literally went down to his programming department, his marketing department, and said, I don't know who these guys are, but I'm tired of watching them make fun of our company. Whatever it is, make a deal with them. So that's how we ended up getting Paramount.
Let me ask you this, though, Larry. So, I mean, Lawrence and I know this from working in entertainment news so much that sometimes when, we always try to be good people, and we always try to write good stories about people, and we go to sleep at night pretty good at night. But sometimes, obviously, there's some rough stories there, and stories that maybe the celebrities or the Hollywood execs don't really want out there, but it's our job, especially Lawrence working at people. Like, you have to kind of say the truth. People want to know the truth. How do you kind of create that line as a network, especially when you're trying to get some gas behind you to kind of and having a news platform? How do you kind of develop that line with these studios saying, hey, yes, we are promoting your films. However, we are going to put some stories out there that you might not be the most happy about? And were they understanding of that,
Yeah, and the answer was yes, because we weren't out there looking for those stories. I mean, there are some outlets out there, that with letters not to be named, that were really looking for the train wrecks. We didn't look for the train wrecks. We were looking to celebrate the media and entertainment business. But if there was a story that was rough, we would cover it. But it wasn't the story we were looking for. They never felt like they're here to dig up the dirt. If there's something bad that happened, we always had, again, the Hollywood Reporter executive report. If it was a business, problem, they would report it, and that was a recognized news outlet. So that really worked. But some of the stuff that really did it for us, we looked very pirate, and we were very different for the audience. And we did have an edit rule that. We were into short form before anybody knew what short form was. Was you could kind of go in and out of E at anything. You get up, go to the bathroom, and come back, and it's not like you missed yesterday's episode. It was kind of, you could join anytime. There wasn't this big commitment you needed to make to our programming. But the first Oscar awards that we applied for credentials, and we were denied. And they said to us, well, you're some little cable network. No, we're not giving you credentials. We climbed over the fence, and we were on the red carpet talking to people. And I was actually the grip. I actually had to carry the camera bags and all of that. Again, we didn't have a lot of people or a lot of money. But we're on the red carpet talking to people. And, then it was Entertainment Tonight, go, so Mr. Cruz, tell us about your next movie. And our folks were there like, hey, Tom, what are you wearing? That's cool. Where'd you get it? And then we got caught. We got thrown out. They literally tossed us out. But when we showed that footage, people were like, wow, that was amazing. It looked like we were watching something we're not supposed to see. And, and we were like, yeah, it's like we got caught and they threw us out. And that kind of, when we started to realize that if we talked to celebrities about the things that they were interested in, that they would really open up and say stuff. So, we started bringing things, people would go to work the next day and go, oh my God, did you watch E last night? They talked to so-and-so and she talked about, her new affair with her boyfriend or something like that. So there was a lot of discovery there. But then the other one that really changed the way that Hollywood looked at us, there was an actor named Jack Lemmon. You guys probably, Jack Lemmon?
Sure.
He was
Yeah.
Odd Couple and stuff like that. And Jack was famous for not talking to the press. So if he had a new movie, Odd Couple or whatever, he was not doing press interviews. He just didn't want to do it, and he was such stature. So I was talking to his manager, and I go, "Hey, I want to get Jack to come on." He's like, "Jack, don't do it." I go, "Well, what does Jack do?" They go, "Hey, he likes staying home. He plays the piano. He's happy with that." So I said, "I'll tell you what. I'll put a piano on the set." I said, "Jack could come in and play the piano for an hour. Nobody will talk to him. Nobody will ask him any questions." And again, we had 24 hours a day, and you got to figure out how you fill it up. So giving Jack an hour to play the piano was not a big deal for us. And it was our studio. All we had to do was turn on the lights. So Jack came in and very wary, the manager there, and they're just waiting. They're going, "These guys can't be serious that nobody's going to talk to us." And Jack just started playing the piano, and he was like looking around, waiting for somebody to break that promise that nobody would talk to him. But then kind of a half an hour in, he got so comfortable, he started talking to the camera. And he started answering all the questions that people wanted to ask him for years. And it was one of the most brilliant, it was an interview without an interviewer. He just talked about what he wanted to talk about. And then when word got out around town, people were calling us going, "How the heck did you get Jack Lemmon to do that?" And so that kind of opened up. Then people were going, "We got these new guys that call the Wayans brothers, would you put them on the set?" And they go, "Yeah, when do they want to come in?" And they go, "How about like in an hour?" And we go, "Yeah, we just turn on the light." I mean, literally, because we had this studio. We were actually at the freight railroad station of Hollywood because we couldn't afford a studio. And we turned the freight thing, the warehouse into the studio. And so, we could turn it on anytime we wanted. And again, we weren't really interested in the quality of the video or the audio. Because we couldn't afford the real equipment then, that we were able to do like a lot of silly things, and
Yeah.
like, we would be friends with Paula Abdul, and Paula would come by to meet us for lunch or something, and she'd go, "Oh, that hosting looks really cool. I wish I could do that." And we go, "Let's go in the studio," and we turn the lights on and we do it. So it was that very impromptu, very piratey kind of thing that really. Hold on, the gardener's going by. It was, that thing that really embraced us and made us look so different to the audience, particularly in those early days. Again, it was my sensibility, that Hollywood is just funny stuff. When we did, the first breakthrough show was Talk Soup. And, when I went and told the team, I want to do a TV show that makes fun of TV shows. And
Great
they were
idea.
like,
You created Talk Soup? Was that your
Yeah.
idea?
yeah.
Wow,
Amazing.
that is awesome.
Yeah, people going, you're out of your mind. You can't do a TV show that makes fun of TV shows. And I'm like, why not? We got Greg. Greg Kinnear was the first host of it. And, say, "Greg, we're going to show you clips, just make fun of it." We didn't have writers. We couldn't afford writers. So we kind of winged it. We'd watch the clips and Greg would comment. Not, obviously Talk Soup wasn't such a crazy idea. It ran 26 years. And probably made the careers of, at
Craig
least a
Kilborn,
dozen
Greg
folks.
Kinnear, Joel
Al Sparks,
McHale.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, Hal Sparks. Wow. That is amazing. Actually, when you're talking about making the shows for cheap, it reminds Lawrence and I of us, one of the first things I worked on, which was TMZ, was, basically making cheap content around entertainment news. And also, like TMZ did, it's hard getting into those events. And that's what you did, is sort of like what the TMZ kind of took that model in some ways of trying to get their foot in the door, because Hollywood is, it's a club. It's very cliquey, right? Would you say, Lawrence?
Yeah, I think for me, I would say it's a dance, right? Like it's a dance with studios and with talent. And I think the through line that I'm hearing, Larry, is that you really saw an opportunity to kind of zig where everybody else was zagging. When I do think of E, I think of True Hollywood Story. I think of profiles. You mentioned one of the questions you would ask is, "What are you wearing?" I think E really owned that fashion beat as well. And not a lot of people were doing that. And that's where you and the network really leaned into so hard. Was there ever a program that you regretted or something that didn't work for you? You know, you obviously had a lot of success with Talk Soup, you know, the doc style, the short form doc styles that you were talking about. Was there just a format that didn't hit the mark or just didn't work out for you?
Good
Well,
question.
it worked for the audience, but it didn't work for me, and that was the Anna Nicole thing.
Yeah.
Remember,
Forgot about that.
and
Reality TV. You're a pioneer there too. Yeah.
yeah, we were pioneering that, and that one bothered me because I thought the crews were pushing too hard for the train wreck stories, and I would say, you know, guys, you're going to push this girl to kill herself, and unfortunately that's what happened. So yeah, that was the only regret, but we did, again, having 24 hours a day and not a lot of money, you had to be really inventive. So that's what led itself to, things like E Hollywood True Story and Wild on E and stuff like that. Once we had a little money, we could do, a little bit of that kind of stuff. And, Howard Stern was another one. When we came up with that, and that was a collaborative decision. It wasn't just me, but, then after I was convinced, I went to, our team and said, "Hey, we should put cameras in this guy's radio studio."
I mean, man, you changed people's lives with that show. I mean, that was incredible.
Huge.
But people didn't realize. They were going, "You're out of your mind. We thought you were crazy with Talk Soup, but radio died 40 years ago and whatever." And I said, "You guys don't get it. There was an old TV show in the U.S. called WKRP in Cincinnati, which was all about a radio show." I said, "This is the real life version of KRP in Cincinnati. It's not a radio show. This is a sitcom." And, and obviously Howard did really well and stuff. But it was that ensemble cast that people just, you loved some of them, you hated some of them. Sometimes you liked Howard and stuff like that. And then, with Howard, his radio audience was bigger than our TV audience. But he would always be there and make sure to watch my show on, E! Or Movie Time at the time. And so that was all free marketing for us. So whether we were smart or just very lucky, we did a lot of things that really were right. And again, a lot of it has to do with just having to be really inventive and figure out how do we best use this $2.5 million?
So smart. Was there any
scrappy.
So scrappy. Was there any shows that you passed on that you regret?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, people would. I miss a whole bunch. I mean, with Ryan Seacrest, I think I interviewed Ryan 3 or 4 times, and going, "Ryan, you're a nice boy, but this is not for you. Maybe you should think of accounting." Till finally he just wore us down. When Alan was my partner Alan was friends with Paula Abdul. This is before she was just teaching cheerleaders how to dance. And he's going, "Yeah, Paula's going to be a big star. She's got an album coming out. And she's whatever." And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he's going, "We should have a host." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know, finally, like I say, she was there one day and we said, "Great, turn the lights on, put her on." And so I was wrong a lot. But I'm fairly egoless. Where I could just look at stuff and go, "What was I thinking? I was dumb. Next." And just, move on quickly. And that, and again, that kind of attitude is really what helped us. We didn't hang on to stuff that wasn't working. We just said, "Nah, it didn't work. Next."
No.
What about Joan Rivers? Did you have any involvement with Joan on the network?
Oh yeah, sure. When we started doing, that all the red carpet stuff, we realized that fashion and we looked at E! As not just news, but whereas America watches Hollywood, and we looked at we looked at pop culture. We thought pop culture was our mission. So it was not just film, it was not just TV, it was fashion, it was music, it was people's closets, and it was all that kind of stuff. We thought was all part of one thing. And yeah, so when getting Joan and Melissa, was a no-brainer. I mean, we just knew that people are going to love them, or again, feel something, love them or hate them. People go, oh, she's so mean. How could she say that kind of stuff? But they tuned in, every week.
Yeah. So what about the Kardashians? That probably came after your kind of reign there, right?
Yeah, Kardashians came after, but um, I was friends with Bruce and Chris when Bruce, before
Sure.
he became Caitlyn. Um, and so I knew the girls when, I met the girls when they were, just little girls. And, quite honestly, that whole phenomenon, I don't think Kris Jenner gets enough credit for, what she did. I mean, she was really the brains behind it. And she was like going, the girls should be on TV and stuff like that. And we were like, we're not ready for child actors yet. When they grow up, we'll relook at it. But it's actually a side story that, me and Alan and Chris and Bruce and we wanted to start another TV network called FX TV, Fitness and Exercise Television. And we actually owned FX before Fox. We sold that name to Fox.
Smart.
But it was me and Alan and Chris and Bruce and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and unfortunately this other guy named O.J. Simpson, and we were going to start this new TV network, and we were marching along until until O.J. decided to get rid of Nicole. So that kind of killed that. But Chris was always very good friends with Nicole. And she would constantly be saying to us, how could you guys be friends with him? He beats Chris, he beats Nicole and stuff like that. So she was championing Nicole and I got to say, warning everybody about, what a monster he could be and stuff. So obviously that idea for the network fell apart and stuff. But again, I think the girls have done very, very well on their own, but I think it's really this whole thing, all the stuff that they've learned from mom.
So all the shows that E did, what was the biggest show, the most successful show that you think that was done during your time there?
Talk Soup, I think.
Was the most profitable just because cost-wise it was cheap to make, and then it was ratings-wise it did well? Or
Yeah. Well, the general stuff we did using the movie trailers was obviously the cheapest stuff. Of course, we got the trailers for nothing.
Sure.
So the business model was interesting, and so we would get the best 2 minutes of a film from the studio, and then we would show it, and Schwarzenegger has a new movie, and we show the trailers, and it did very well. But we started doing research showing we actually did exit polls at movie theaters, so that we go, how did you decide which movie to go see? And then we would actually develop this data saying, okay, last week 3% of the people who went to the movies went because of something they saw on E, and then the following week 4% to 5%. So we would then go to the advertising department at the movie studios and say, hey, last week 12% of the people who went to the movies decided what movie based on what they saw on E, you should advertise. So, and they were like very hard pressed to argue that, people that were watching, Movie Time or E was like a good place to advertise a movie or, any media project. But it took the studios about 3 years to realize they were giving us the content for free, and then we were selling them advertising around the content that they gave us for free. So as a business model, it was brilliant. But then they caught on and they went, wait a second, we're giving you this stuff for free, and we're sending our video crews out, and we're paying the expenses and giving you this stuff, and then you charge us to advertise around what we give you for free. So, we had to kind of restructure those deals a little.
Yeah. You've talked a lot about the business. At some point, E was big, profitable. You also mentioned that you had very smartly kind of sold the rights to FX networks. What was your exit from E like, and the sale of E? Tell us that story, because that's the next chapter in what you did.
Sure. We when we were originally going out, to raise money. We talked to everybody, and the first cable company that this is the second round, not the first round. After we had the 2.5, we were looking for more money. So Cox Cable, a guy named Ajit Dalvi, was the first one who really recognized how valuable this could be to cable companies in terms of promoting all the things that would be on their pay services. And but then I pitched home box office, a guy named Michael Fuchs. And remember back in my Manhattan cable days, I was an installer. I literally installed the cable in Michael's office on my hands and knees. So he just thought of me, oh, this is some dumb installer. I don't really have to deal with him. So even though we had agreed with the cable operators to let them come into this second round, Michael was saying, no, don't bring them in. I'll come in and I'll do it and stuff. And I wouldn't do it because I like cable operators more than I like Michael Fuchs. But he kept. We had timing cable, which was called ATC at the time, was one of the partners that came in. HBO was another partner that came in. Warner Cable came in. Warner Communications came in. So we had 7 board seats. But then when Time Warner merged, they then controlled 4 of the board seats. My relationship with Michael was not good. I'm still a Brooklyn street kid, and I don't like people bullying me around and stuff like that. And and I remember when Michael told me that he thought the whole thing was a stupid idea, because I did go to him at one point very early on, and he said, Larry, this is dumb, nobody cares about this Hollywood stuff, go away. And then he came back and had to put a heck of a lot more money into it, after he realized. But so that became very contentious. The 3 cable operators that weren't part of the Time Warner family, the 4 board members that were part of the Time Warner family, and I found myself no longer being able to be creative. I mean, and that's what I've always considered myself, to be a creative person. But so the combination of that board mess with the fact that we grew enormously quick. We were the fastest growing cable network in the world. In the first year, we were in 14 countries,
Wow.
which was unheard of. But again, people go, wow, how did you do that? I go, how hard was it to figure out that people around the world love Hollywood train wrecks and gossip and Hollywood stories? And, we would go to London and go, hey, do you want this? And I go, yeah, we know all those stars. That's great. You're going to cover the British movies, and go, yeah, sure. If you put it on, we'll cover the British movies. So we grew. So it became, I was no longer doing all the things that I like, and I was spending time in boardrooms, either watching them fight with each other or having to figure out new budgeting and stuff like that, and then spending really not enough time on the things that I loved. And finally, Michael Fuchs was just going to the board going, I could run this company so much better than he does for the same amount of money and stuff like that. And I said, you know what? Great. I'll go off. I'll stay on the board. I'll go off and build international and stuff. Put in someone to run the day to day, which is fine, because I didn't want to run budgets and HR and all that kind of stuff. And so that's what we did. I went off and for a few years just was doing all the stuff I liked and letting them run the business side.
Yeah. So Larry, I got to ask, how much did you walk away with? Was it
I'm not allowed to say.
Can you say more than 8 figures?
Yeah.
Wow.
Man, I'm in the wrong side of the industry.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's pretty cool. That is, I mean, that's very cool. So, obviously, Larry, you haven't given up. You're still a creative guy. What are you up to these days? Like, what are you currently working on?
Well, I always started to realize that Hollywood, everybody used to think of Hollywood as a geographic place. It's like if you want to make movies, you go to Hollywood. But I started really thinking about how technology was changing that. and that Hollywood was really becoming more. It was a mindset. It was a level of creativity and stuff. And I mean, now you look today. I don't have to be in Hollywood to make a movie. I can take my iPhone to Nigeria and make movies on my iPhone. So I really wanted to start doing stuff out of the U.S. So for myself, even when I was still at E, I went to Russia and I started, a media company in Russia, um, doing concerts and TV shows and stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun. And, I was very successful at it. We had the number one TV show in Russia for 10 years. Outside of the E family, it was a company called Comspan that I had. Um, and then, more recently, I was invited into China. They wanted me to help them rethink like media laws and regulations and stuff. Because if they were going to create a consumer economy, it had to look a little more familiar to Western marketers. Because people with money want to buy Western luxury goods typically. So, ads needed to be, it was very simple. TV ads are 30, 60, 90. They're not whatever you feel like today, or if you know the right guy in the Communist Party, you do whatever you want. So I was invited in by the Chinese government because I had done that for the Russians. And they loved the Russian model, which, of course, there was always that caveat, here's the line that you don't step over, like criticizing the government and things like that. And so I was in there, I did that, and then the guys who run the day to day, if you had to profile it, they're 40 to 50, they run Stanford, Harvard, and Yale. They're not the heavy duty doctrine guys. They believe in the cause, but they're not the old guard. And they said, this is, we love working with you. Why don't you start a media company here so we could learn from you? And I went, it's because you don't let Western media companies in here. And they went, well, we don't let the ones we don't like. And I go, okay, so why are you going to be so kind to me? And they said, it's really simple. We have a fight with Rupert Murdoch. It's front page of the Wall Street Journal. When we have a fight with you, we go out for drinks, we yell at each other all night, but tomorrow we're good. They go, for now, that's what we'd rather do. So I said, okay, but there's legally I can't exist as a media company here. And they said, well, go to this lawyer. And we went to the lawyer they sent us, and they set us up as, quote, an experimental company. And we've been an experiment in China for 13 years now. Um, when they want you there, they make it easy. When they don't want you there, they make it impossible. So we're there. And so in China, we do TV, film. We do a lot of stuff for brands whose marketing message is too complex to get across in a 30-second TV commercial. So we do a lot of product integrated into story, not product placement, but where, we did for Bacardi. They wanted to start bartender school. So I created Friends meets Big Bang Theory, that kind of thing. And one of the kids says, hey, I'm going to bartender school. So it was part of a running storyline, which worked really, really well for them. And so we do concerts there. We do a lot of immersive. So I don't know if you've seen things like immersive Van Gogh and Klimt and Under.
Sure.
So we buy the rights to those, and we do those in China. So that's the China thing. And then with COVID, and I would spend a lot of time there. And but then COVID came, and they wanted me to quarantine in a Chinese hotel for 3 weeks at the beginning of COVID. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. I said, I got an apartment. I'll stay in my apartment. They went, no, you got to go to the Chinese hotel. And I'm like, no, 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 you're not going to feed me my lunch under the door. And so I started, said, I realized I'm never going to be good at golf, so I don't want to do that. I don't want to go buy a yacht and go live in Monaco and drink cocktails at 4 every day. So I started another company here in the U.S. To really develop shows. And a lot of the stuff I've been doing lately here in the U.S. all has kind of, let's call it social impact or social good. So we created a series. One of the few companies, I put together a really cool team of very young people who mainly interned for me at one point, because I need people who share my sensibility.
Sure.
I don't want rocket scientists, and So the first one we did was kind of a financial wellness for millennials show because kids don't learn anything in school anymore.
Yeah, very smart.
Uh, and then we found this woman who does all these TED Talks around the world about parenting. So we created a series called Conscious Parenting, all about trying to be a parent in today's complex world, which is, it's when I was born, my mother took me home from the hospital. My grandmother lived upstairs. My aunt lived next door. My mother had the proverbial village. Now kids grow up, they barely know their grandparents, and they go off to college and they get married in a different state, and you have a baby in the morning, and in the afternoon they hand it to you and they go, "Here you go," and you're like, "Oh my God, what do I do with it?" But being a parent doesn't end when the kid is 18 and out of the house. You're the parent for the rest of your life, and now you got school shootings and you got bullying and gender ID issues, and so we created this conscious parenting show. I got another one that actually goes on. I'll go on in November. I can't tell you the network yet because the lawyers are still doing the paperwork. But there are no women in late night television in America. Since Chelsea Handler came off. So I found this gal out of the UK named Natasha Graziano. 7 years ago, Natasha was a homeless mom in London with a kid, and she went and did OnlyFans to get enough money to pay the rent and feed her kid and stuff like that. Came to the U.S. and 7 years later, she's a motivational coach. Got 16.5 million social media followers. Living in Bel Air, and she life coaches will.i.am and Steve Aoki and all of those folks. So there was a throwback show, way back in the day called Playboy After Dark, where it was you kind of thought every Friday night you were in Hugh Hefner's living room, and he'd have this eclectic group. He'd have poets and authors and new musicians and pretty girls and all of that stuff. So I created this show called Natasha After Dark, which is not so much, of the desk and the two chairs and going, "So, Mr. Cruz, tell me about your next, Mission Impossible." It was, she'd have people on like former Vine star Batch, King Batch, and he's now Batch, and he's a
Sure.
popular, going, "Tell us about relationships," and so she's very inspirational and aspirational. And so the show is not really promoting your next project. It's really digging into like, okay, who are you? Um, and stuff. So we shot that. I shot it in a nightclub in LA, and so it was different. It wasn't even shot in the studio. And so we got a sizzle and whatever. And she's having another baby in September, but so her show will go on in November. Um,
Larry, you are a busy guy. I mean, I got to be honest. You still have as much fight as you did when you were 25, and I think that's the pretty credible thing. I mean, the list amount of projects you have working on is I don't know I don't know if you have 30 hours in a day and I have 24 because you are insanely busy and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
I hire very smart. So
yeah,
all the people around me are really good. I don't. I only hire people that are smarter than me in particular areas, because I don't need an editor that I could edit better. I need an editor who could edit better than me. I need development people that are better in certain niches than I am. So I'm surrounded by a really really good group of folks, and that allows me to kind of step back. Yeah, but then I'm also involved heavily in kind of the new economic world and crypto and blockchain and NFTs, and I'm doing a show actually in February, myself and a guy named Chris Nook, called the Nifty Awards, which is going to be the Oscars of the metaverse. I fight with the guilds and the unions all the time here that they just don't get that the world has changed. They better wake up. Um, but on the Nifty Awards, yeah, I mean, you look at it. Like I say, we could make a TV show or a movie anywhere in the world these days. We don't have to be in Hollywood. But yet, when we have the Oscars, we have one category called Best Foreign Film. And I'm like going, what the heck is a foreign film? I mean, there's good films, there's bad films. I mean, what is a foreign film? Um, so we're doing this award, but what's different about that is we're actually going to put the award show out on a Zoom platform. Is we kind of doing Zoom on steroids. So anybody in the world with a Zoom client can watch it. And I think we're up to about 570,000 simultaneous Zoom feeds we could do, um, which is a little deceptive because in countries like China, where you can't Zoom straight to the house, we drop it off at one Chinese platform and they redistribute it to 10 million homes. So in places like China and Turkey and North Korea and stuff like that, a single Zoom feed. But the reason we wanted to do it that way is because we've tokenized it. So in order to get it, you got to buy the NFT, which is your entry point to watch the show.
Sure.
But it gets
Wow.
recorded on the blockchain and becomes irrefutable proof that you actually participated. When you look back and you look at Woodstock, the original Woodstock here, there were 500,000 people that attended Woodstock. But when Harris did a poll, there are 20 million people who claimed they were at Woodstock.
Yeah.
How do you prove who was really there? But if you do it with an NFT token and you record it on the blockchain,
You can keep track.
it becomes
Yeah.
irrefutable proof. And again, we just want to do proof of concept. We're not looking to make money. We're charging $1. But it's just to show people that this works. But then the other stuff.
And isn't that the through line in your career, Larry? Is the through line in your career is really showing people what works and being scrappy. And I just love that you continue to do this X decades into your career and for sharing your story with us, because I think you're just two things. I think you're a storyteller at heart, and I think you're an innovator. And I think that's really, really served you well with with these new things that you're doing. So kudos to that.
Yeah, Lawrence couldn't have said any better. I agree. That's just, he's a storyteller and an innovator. Larry, a lot of our audiences right now waiting to go into their office. They're in their car waiting to finish this interview, or they're waiting to walk in their door as their kids waiting for dinner, and they're like thrilled to listen to these stories. But we're gonna wrap here. But I thank you so much for taking the time. These stories to me, especially to Lawrence and I, who are entertainment aficionados, we're obsessed with this culture, and as we always like to say, we love how the sauce is made, and you're the chef.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what you did for the industry. I appreciate what you did for my, entertainment as, just watching the shows and starting E has been a big part of my childhood, my life. So I appreciate what you've done. And I look forward to seeing what you do next, because obviously you got a great batting average. So I want to keep seeing you hit home runs.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Lawrence, you're like me. We enjoy like the industry. Of course we love housewife stuff. Of course we love, Hollywood, who's dating who and all that stuff. But then we also like hearing the executives, the industry kind of talk. Because honestly, at the end of the day, like, yes, the celebrities are big, but these are the powerful people.
Yeah. It's what I call telling the story of the storytellers, right?
Yeah.
Without a storyteller, you could be the biggest celebrity, the biggest movie, but you need that outlet, and you need that distribution, and you need that storyteller. And those storytellers often have the most interesting stories, because they are the ones who are talking to the celebrities and talking to the power players. And they're really the people that have the inside of Hollywood.
Yeah, they know what's going on. They're the ones who are doing the stats to see what people are clicking on, what people are watching. Sometimes when I meet a lot of these people, I get very nervous. Like the other day, Lawrence, I was in a green room and I met the guy who created Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And I froze up. I was like, oh, this guy is like, I meet celebrities all the time. Yeah, but these are the guys that actually are the decision makers. And, your career, your life can kind of go in their hands a little bit. And of course, this guy actually launched a lot of careers, and Larry is just a legend in the game. I mean, to create shows like Talk Soup, which is like the original cheap broadcasting, it seems like what he did.
Yeah.
Which, again, smart. And when we see that today, it's like not about the huge production shows. It's like, hey, tell me what's the cheapest show you can make that could really bring in an audience. And also, it makes sense what he said, what they were doing on red carpets. Like, you're not supposed to be seeing this, but you're seeing it. And that's what made people tune in more. And And that's sort of what I'm doing now with what I do for a living with these celebrity interviews on the street. It's, you're not supposed to be catching them on the street, but I do. And that's what gets people to view in. So, Lawrence, where can people find you on social, read your stories, read your expertise, your writings?
Yeah, so I run the night desk at people.com. So anything that publishes after 5 p.m. Eastern, I have a hand in. You can follow me on X, which was formerly Twitter. My handle is Lawrence Yee. It's spelled Lawryee. You can also just Google my name. I'm not that type of person, but truly it does bring up my bylines. Right now, we're covering so much that's happening in the world of Hollywood, politics, entertainment, sports, and beyond. People really does cover every human interest story and every celebrity story. But I love podcasts like yours. I love what, Larry has done with, E, and just kind of getting that real insider perspective. That's been people's bread and butter for a long time. And again, we're ultimately just storytellers. So, the more that you read our stories, the more that we can tell them.
That's great. Lawrence Yee, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a long time. I'm going to have you on much more. If you guys are watching us on Red Coral, thank you. We're also on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're on it all. We have a private Facebook group called Off the Record. You guys should be on. You could ask us anything. Actually, we're going to be doing an Ask Us Anything episode coming up. So I'll put that in the Facebook group Off the Record. And if you put the question off the record, we'll kind of hit all those questions. Those episodes do really well for us. Follow me at Adam Glenn. Dax Holt will be back soon. We'll see you next week.
What's up, guys? If you like that video, there's plenty more where that came from.
Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell so we can just feed you all the goodness daily.
Hurry up. Come on, let's go.